Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Just a quick reminder that I do giveaways every single week, so if you're interested in entering and don't know how to, just stay tuned until later in the video and I'll tell you exactly how. That said, we have some malicious compliance stories, and our first story of the day is by Lagonas. You refuse to call in sick? You're breaking the law. After reading all these great stories here, which gave me a lot of enjoyment, I wanted to share my story as well. I want to emphasize that I did not want this to end the way it did, but I also had no say in it. Around 10 years ago, I was working as a contractor for a large Asian multinational who has its roots in the tech industry. A small note, I am working for a company who specializes in contracting specialists in a certain field to other companies. My actual employer has not much to do with this story. I worked for Company X, who contracted me out to the multinational, who contracted me out to a large aviation company in Western Europe. It's a weird but common setup in Europe. I have worked there for a good 6 years, on the on-site support department. It was my job to support just shy of 10,000 employees with computer issues, new software, hardware swaps, etc., etc. I personally am specialized in VIP support, which is a separate role due to that the higher up management are mainly older men who have a bit of a manual. You need to talk to them in a specific way or they don't understand it and get very defensive. At a certain point in this position, I noticed that I was getting random pain streaks in my groin area. I had been walking with this pain for almost 2 months. In my mind, I already knew how the tests would turn out, but I was in denial for a long time. I did not want to believe that I could possibly be sick, as I never had any medical issues in my life. At a certain morning, the pain got terrible, and I felt that one of my testes felt like it was made of stone, and when I touched it, my body wouldn't feel/register it. Due to experience with family members and neighbors and friends, I knew instantly what it was. Testes cancer. I needed no test for that. I called my manager immediately, telling him that I needed to call in sick to see a doctor as soon as possible. He responded by telling me that I could not call in sick due to the workload that I had on me and a few important requests that I needed to complete that only I could do. This was with VIP employees. I explained to him that this was very important. While I did not give him any details, as I'm not required to disclose what I need sick leave for, he flat out denied my sick leave. Let me explain. In my country, you are by law entitled to sick leave for multiple years, while the employer cannot punish you, nor can they do anything against it, given that you actively work with an independent company doctor to improve the situation, answer to requests from them, and checking up every now and then. My manager declining me to see a doctor meant he was breaking the Constitution. Now, here is the malicious compliance. I decided that I did not want to fight this battle, and I did come in that day after sending him an email which stated that I canceled my doctor visit that day on request and demand of my manager, and that I would be excused the next day to see my doctor. When the next day came, 2 things happened. 1, my biggest fear came out, which I dreaded for months. I was indeed diagnosed with testes cancer, and according to the doctor, I needed to have my surgery immediately. The time from diagnosis at my local doctor to laying on the table in a city 30 minutes away was less than 1.5 hours. After the surgery, they explained to me that I was just in time, because else it would have been way worse than it was now, and that I had metastasized to 3 different lymph glands. 2, the day after my surgery, I had a big smile on my face, thanks to my morphine and the expectation of my next action. I could now call my manager to tell him that I would not be coming into work for a while due to cancer. The response is something that I will never forget. He was quiet for close to a minute as he realized that he refused me to go to the doctor while I had cancer, and responded that he understood and that if I needed something, I could give him a call. When I came home from the hospital 2 days later, the aviation company, the customer of my manager, sent me a very large fruit basket and a card signed by all my colleagues to wish me well. After 3 months of radiation therapy, chemo, movies, and boredom, I called the CIO of the aviation company directly because I could not reach my manager with the request if I was allowed to work from home while I continued my recovery. He, of course, flat out declined that immediately and told me that I should take all the time I need and not even think about work. He also reminded me that I am being paid my full salary, despite me working or not, and that I should try to enjoy that luxury. I told him that I understood and that once I got back, that we needed to have a discussion. The day that I got back, 9 months later, I was welcomed by all my colleagues. I explained to all of them at once what happened exactly, as my employer was not allowed to share any details of my sick leave. After this, everybody individually welcomed me personally, and that was it. I went back to work without any special attention. I am not the type of person who wants to be treated differently because of something that can happen to anyone. The same day, the CIO of the aviation company walked by and asked me to have a one-on-one meeting with him, where I explained how everything went and that I'm glad to be back. He reminded me what I told him 9 months before, that I wanted to discuss something with him. I was surprised he remembered that, as I wasn't even thinking about bringing it up. I explained everything in regards to my manager, that he denied my sick leave on the grounds that I had work to do and that he could not give to other employees. I also showed him the email in which stated everything. Kids always keep a paper trail. I did not think anything about it and expected him to have a talk with my manager that it is not correct how he handled this. Boy, was I wrong. The very next day, my manager took me aside and profusely apologized for what happened just before he mentioned that he had to leave for a meeting to attend at the headquarters of his employer. The next day, I learned that the CIO contacted the manager of his employer with a demand that he would be replaced. He also trusted them to take necessary actions against him and that they should be happy that I did not intend to take any legal action against them or the aviation company. After another meeting between me and management from both companies, the manager was fired on the spot. I worked there for 2 more years, after which I left for a job offer I could not refuse. I gladly have beaten cancer and have been healthy for over half a decade now. So personally, I feel like if you have such symptoms and you realize that this is something very serious, regardless of whether or not that manager is trying to force you to come in, you know you're entitled to that sick leave and you know that there's something very wrong, I would have absolutely have blown the job off. And if the manager kept enforcing it and realized you had cancer and they were still trying to drag you away from that, it would have resolved the whole situation very quickly altogether at kind of the beginning of it. What do you guys think? Should OP have just blown the job off and gone to the doctor? Or do you think what OP did was right in making sure that their job security was all right and then handling the situation? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Unkempt27. Take breaks only within the breaks policy? Okay. This happened a few years ago when working for a well-known UK retailer. Not just any retailer, if you know what I mean. I was working on the store operations team at the time, meaning I was responsible for opening or closing the store, dealing with contractors, taking deliveries, supporting the shop floor staff by picking orders to fill the shelves, etc. When on the early shift, 3 or 4 of us would open the store at 5 a.m. We'd do our safety checks and start taking the clothing and food deliveries. We'd also segregate the deliveries, put all produce together, all desserts together, etc., ready for the shop floor staff starting at 7 so they could fill the shelves easier. We'd then be sending stock up to the shop floor. 1 or 2 of us would be on the shop floor cleaning empty trays, tidying up packaging, bringing up or sending down stock, etc., with another 1 or 2 downstairs sorting the stock that came back, putting it in the cold room, sorting the dates, etc. Busy mornings. We were told we couldn't go for a break whilst this was going on, as it was all hands on deck, and we also couldn't all go for our breaks together afterwards, as someone had to be available for anything that came up. Fine, but it would be sometimes maybe 10:30 or 11 by the time we got our break, 5 to 6 hours after starting the shift. Add into this that we'd been working in a cold room, a walk-in fridge, it really would have been nice to have a sit down with a hot drink. Company policy was to give a break at least every 4 hours, which we obviously weren't getting. However, we didn't mind this too much. We understood that we needed to be more flexible. But some mornings, if a delivery was running late or if we got the first one, clothing, done early, say by 5:45, and the next one, food, wasn't due till 6, we'd pop to the canteen for a quick coffee or chill out on the loading bay chatting and waiting for the next delivery. One morning, we all got called up to the manager's office. Someone had complained that we were taking unauthorized breaks. I explained, I was on a staff panel at the time, kind of like an internal union, about how we were being flexible when not getting a break for 5 to 6 hours, when everyone else in the shop got one every 3 to 4 hours, but it fell on deaf ears. We were given a written warning and told that we must not take unauthorized breaks, and if we did have some downtime, we had to fill it by starting to stock shelves ourselves. So we decided to make sure none of us went over the 4-hour threshold for breaks. That meant us taking our breaks from around 8 a.m., right in the middle of when we were needed most. Staff complained that they couldn't get their stock quick enough, or that the shop floor was a mess, that we shouldn't be taking breaks so early. But was starting at 5 a.m. and taking a break at 8 different from them starting at 7 and getting their break at 10? Suffice to say, after a few days of this we went back to normal, and no one complained about us grabbing a quick coffee again. Even though it's not explicitly outlined, I think it's more than fair for the morning crew to get a little bit of extra treatment here. When they work for 5 to 6 hours straight, and you're supposed to get breaks every 3 to 4, and everybody else does get those breaks, letting them take the 15 minutes off when there is downtime I think is more than fair. This next story is by Balduesi. Train my replacement in a matter of hours? I don't think that's gonna work out well for you. I was a dispatcher for a plumbing/HVAC/basement waterproofing company, but I was more of a coordinator. I handled customer bookings, scheduling, some parts of ordering, dispatching, etc. As I used to say, I have more hats than a hat rack. Now my techs had their own tools and I did my work on the computer. I kept bugging the boss for a better computer and he never got me one, so I built a system at my own expense and brought it into the office. My techs had personal tools, so this was mine. As a matter of fact, 10 years later, it's the system I'm typing on now. It has a 4-core processor and a graphics card capable of supporting 4 monitors. To give you a better idea of how long ago this was, I paid $350 for a 60GB SSD. I used 1 monitor for the dispatch software, 1 monitor for Google Maps with traffic overlay, 1 monitor for Outlook, and 1 monitor for QuickBooks to issue invoices and purchase orders. When I gave notice, my boss, the owner, and I agreed on 3 weeks' notice as an exit strategy. Unknown to me, the owner was convinced I was bluffing and was just hunting for a raise. He refused to hire a replacement. My boss was more of a field supervisor. The owner handled the office and admin. Finally, the day before my last day at 2 p.m., I was introduced to the new hire. Seriously? You intend to have me train a guy for a complicated pivotal role in a few hours? I was on a 44-hour schedule, 10 hours Monday to Thursday, and Friday I was off at 11 a.m. I said my goodbyes and at 11 a.m. began dismantling my computer. First thing I did was format the hard drive as I told them I was going to do. Fortunately for them, the data was all backed up on the server, except for what had transpired that morning, despite my repeated warnings to trigger a backup into the server at 11 a.m. The owner came out in a bit of a panic when he saw me taking apart the computer, as he had forgotten that it was me that owned it, and now his dispatch station had no computer. He asked if I could leave the computer behind, and I declined. He set my replacement up on an unused antique computer in a cubicle. It had a freaking CRT monitor, was slow as molasses. The job was hard enough with 4 screens. I can't imagine doing it with 1. This guy wasn't a dummy, but there's no way I could have trained him in a few hours. He had the bare bones of the processes, and that's it. By noon, I was out of the door. My boss spent the remainder of the day and most of the next week in the field, leaving the owner to deal with the fallout, and it was legendary. Nobody could handle it. The replacement quit, just never showed up on Tuesday, and nobody else in the office could do what I was doing. He dumped PO generation into accounting, which pissed them off with the extra workload. He tried to handle scheduling and dispatching himself and pissed off a lot of the techs. He stuck one of the CSRs into training for the role, and she wasn't the brightest bulb in the chandelier. The best part? I used to handle after hours on call, and since there was nobody with enough experience, the owner had to answer his phone at all hours of the night, 7 days a week. That's when the exodus started. Over the next few weeks, many of the good techs bailed, jobs were screwed up. I heard that he had 2 basement waterproofing jobs, each worth 5 figures, double booked. The company hit the wall hard. How do I know? About 3 years ago, I reached out to my boss on LinkedIn, and he had moved on to another employer. He offered me a job and I took it. We get along famously, and he has told me all kinds of stories about the crap that hit the fan when I left. And all they had to do was buy a new computer and give me enough time to get the new guy in the groove. This is just perfect documentation on what not to do when you manage a company. I feel like if somebody gives you a notice, you gotta take them at their word. Even if they are bluffing and you wanna call them out on that bluff, I feel like the best way to follow through on that bluff is to actually just go through with it. If that makes them reconsider, then perfect. But otherwise, you're able to get a new guy in, get him trained, get everything set up the way you need it, and your company won't completely explode before your very eyes. But in hindsight, I'm sure it's a shoulda, coulda, woulda type deal. So quickly now, I want to explain just how to enter the giveaway. All you need to do is leave a comment on this video relevant to something you saw or heard or liked in any story in that video. That's it, you're entered. But it applies to every single video we upload this week. So to get the best odds at winning the $30 Amazon gift card giveaway, you'll want to leave a comment relating to any of those videos all week long. On Sunday, after the last video has gone out, I'll pick one comment at random and let you know on the following Monday who has won, and then it starts all over again. So make sure you leave a relevant comment on this video and additionally every video I upload this week for the absolute best chance to win. And while you're at it, why don't you go ahead and give the videos a like too, because it helps more than you could imagine. That said, our final story of the day is by cccubbb. How about we take this outside? I worked in a Wetherspoons, super cheap UK pub that was really close to the train station in my city. It happened to be the cheapest place to get drunk before moving on to the clubs and was close enough to loads of other bars. So we would be stacked to the rafters from about 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., full of absolutely sozzled fanny heads. This one particular evening was super busy and I was collecting empty glasses. I was under a lot of pressure from my boss to get rid of the empties because they were stacking up on every table. So I was swooping around, grabbing up jars, deftly dancing around the drunkards like a poorly paid ninja. I get to this one table and there was a drink on the side that has like a dribble left in it, and I mean a dribble. So I thought to myself, sod it, it's going. This lager is tepid, it'd probably been abandoned. No bother, job's a good'un. But before I could turn around, I was accosted by what I can only describe as a big hairy man, because that's what he was. Very drunk, very angry, he loomed over me and said,
"You gonna give me another one then? You threw away my pint."
To which I replied, no, and attempted to move on with my life. This guy grabbed me, stopped me from leaving, and I started to see his crew gather around him all equally pissed and all very goonish. Clearly, I had disturbed the alpha buffoon.
"Do you wanna take this outside?"
He leered in closely. "Yeah, go on then, let's take this outside," I replied curtly from out of my skinny face. I'm not a fighter. If you saw my body, you would know I was built to run away. I put down the glasses in my hand and casually beckoned him and the rest of his crew outside, flexing my neck muscles and pumping my twiggy arms. I walked out of the door and watched as the whole gaggle of idiots flowed out onto the street outside, fight expectant, baying for blood. When the last flatulent steroid had passed the threshold, I turned casually to the bouncers and said, "Don't let these boys back in. They just threatened to attack me." And I sauntered back to work, leaving the group of shafted slime molds stuck outside looking very upset. I caught a last glimpse of one particular alpha ball bag, a look of wallpaper paste across his meaty face, still confused, trying to work out what had just happened to him. Sure is nice to have bouncers to rely on in a situation like that. Makes it a little easier to be a little bit more confident than you normally would, being able to try and rely on them not totally decking you before you can get them all out onto the street past the bouncers. It was a smart but also very risky move, but it paid off well for OP. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which one and why in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe if you haven't, and turn on notifications so you'll never miss an upcoming video from the Storytime channel. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, so no matter what you did, thank you for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time right here.